Hey everyone, Evan Kirstel. Happy Monday. Here with a great guest today to talk about enhanced and improved customer experience. Matt Taylor, co-founder of Noble. Matt, how are you?
Great, Evan. Thanks for having me on, and really excited to dig into a lot of exciting topics today.
Well, I'm excited to meet you, and you guys are blazing a trail towards better customer experiences, and you're doing it in a really unique way. You talk about goodbye chatbots and hello virtual concierge. Would love to understand, what your mission is.
Yeah, so I mean, our mission at the end of the day is to conversationalize the world's content. So when you think about chatbots or search experiences, when you enter into a website or a mobile app, a lot of the time it's very difficult to find the information you're looking for. And we've tried with a lot of different solutions, and chatbots are one of those where you enter a chatbot, it gives you maybe options of, hey, I can help you with one, two, three, four, but if you try to go outside that, it pretty much, is a dead experience. And ultimately, what we saw with this newer leveraging these large language models, that we could really take these brands' content and actually use that to allow users to find information very easily. So, the whole idea of the goodbye chatbots, hello virtual concierge is, if I walked into a hardware store today, someone's going to greet me most likely and say, hey, how can I help you? And they're going to be with me throughout the buying process. I'll be able to ask questions, and they're really going to guide me. And that's just such a good experience. And that's what we've come to, become used to at the brick and mortar. But when we go into, these websites, they haven't changed in decades, where there's just tons of tabs and there's just so many different places you can go, but it's really difficult to actually find out where I can get the information that I ultimately want. And we need to be, now that COVID has really completely shifted this, the idea of where brick and mortar is now going to be the digital front door is your website. And so when I walk into the website, we should have a concierge treating me the same way as if I was walking into that hardware store saying, hey, how can I help you? And guiding me along the process. And the technology is finally in the state to where we can actually do that. And that's what's so exciting about all the stuff that's happening in chat gpt, and really ultimately why we feel at Noble we have a great solution.
And so tell me about your journey, you and the team towards founding and building Noble. What sparked that interest and focus on building, the next gen customer experience?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, all three of us co-founders have been in this space for quite a while. So myself and our CTO Parker Hill, we actually were in a conversational AI startup in Ann Arbor, and this was one of the fastest growing conversational AI startups for a while. Their name was Clink, and when we were growing, we were deploying to a lot, specifically within financial services, but a lot of these bigger brands, like US Bank, Barclays, and we were, launching some great virtual assistants, and the technology was awesome. The problem that we saw though was it was very difficult to scale, and it was such a long road to getting to production. And ultimately, I think once again, COVID really highlighted the issues that this technology had, which is the inability to scale. And what I mean by that is, for example, when you build a virtual assistant, you really want to scope out all the different things it should be able to handle, right? You have your intents, and you want to be able to make sure your intents are contextually aware so that it's a very seamless experience from the user. So the traditional process is to collect a ton of data to actually train each intent on all the different ways someone could say that. And we call those training phrases, utterances. And ultimately, when you're gathering all these utterances to train each intent, it gets very difficult to manage the data as you scale. So, for example, when we were working with some banks during COVID, they'd come to us and say, "Hey, we need some new intents for stimulus checks or loan forgiveness, things that people are really calling into the contact center and are huge pain points for them." And unfortunately, it's not a quick turnaround. It was hey, like stimulus checks that before I can get that intent build, I have to see what data already overlaps with that. We already had intent for ordering checks, we had an intent for depositing checks. So it's not that easy. You have to really rebalance the whole model. And as you add more intents, it gets increasingly more difficult. So what we saw was, as this industry has kind of always been, is the research really leads the industry in terms of coming out with the latest and greatest tech, but a lot of times it's not productized in the market, and there's that gap of what is readily available to customers at the enterprise level, and then ultimately where the research is. And our CTO Parker Hill is he's a PhD and is really been involved in the research from a very young age and continues to be. And ultimately, what he saw was just the ability to leverage these large language models to where we aren't going to need to train it on all this different data. And ultimately, that's what kind of was the birth of Noble. Jay Wolcott, our CEO, had a very similar path where he was working with a social media AI startup that he founded, and they were acquired by Interactions, which is another virtual assistant company. And ultimately, he was seeing the same struggles of trying to scale out and get to market with these very large brands. And so us three kind of came together and took out a clean sheet of paper and said, if we could, leverage these large language models, if we could start over, how would we build it? And that's really where we started in November of 21. And went live with the product in June of last year. So we're kind of in stealth mode for a while. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey. ChatGPT, it's so funny, like how much that has changed people's perceptions of this. I laugh because early on we were using terms like large language models, transformer models, and it almost scared enterprises. They didn't know what that was. So it got to a point where we actually stopped using those terms because they just, when you say transformer model, they're just like, what is that? And then all of a sudden, ChatGPT comes out, and now enterprises that we've been talking to are saying, wait a minute, are you guys using large language? You guys are the ones using transformer-based models, right? And it's funny now because the technology and the terminology is now becoming, synonymous. And so it's a lot easier to talk to these enterprises and really explain how we are different from ChatGPT, but ultimately how we're still leveraging some of that similar technology.
I love that. It's nice being early sometimes. And you've been in this game for a long time, but along comes ChatGPT, and you've sort of coined the phrase brand GPT. So is that really what you're doing, bringing ChatGPT and related models to large brands?
Yeah, so like when you think of ChatGPT, the idea is that from the most basic sense, conversation is understanding and
Hmm.
generation. So if I'm talking with you, one, I have to understand what you're saying to me, the question you ask, and then I have to generate a response. So when you think about the large language models that GPT is using, like GPT-3 and 3.5, they're using it for an understanding and also the generation. The problem
Hmm.
is the generation part, the natural language generation is not really, enterprises are not going to be on board yet with being able to allow the AI to really say whatever, right? Like they have to constrain it. They have to, be compliant, especially some of these industries like healthcare, financial services, insurance. And so ultimately what we did was we configured this model to be able to constrain to the content that the brand has. So what we can do is we actually will go in and work with the brand and ingest all their content from all their different sources. And I mean, these enterprises have such a vast amount, right? Over knowledge bases, content management systems, raw documents. And what we can do is ingest all of that and then allow the user to then go in and ask any question. And what we're going to do is provide a response based on all the content we have, but we're going to constrain it to that content. So in a way,
Hmm.
we're using the large language models for the natural language understanding, but the generation part, we're constraining it to the content they have. So it's compliant, right? And that's ultimately how we differentiate.
Oh, I love it. And I love the idea of, not searching and browsing a website for an hour to find relevant information. You talk about this concierge, and is that a concept that came from a particular bad experience that maybe you had on a website or with customer service over the years?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about like each like evolution, the names of these like from chatbots to it went to virtual assistants, went to intelligent virtual assistants. Everyone's always, the evolution of the terminology changes because we're always trying to figure out what's the next best technology that we can leverage, but then also it needs a newer name. And so virtual concierge just kind of goes back to the point where we want it to mimic as closely as possible the inhuman experience that you would get if you went to a brand, like a
Mm.
hotel, for example. If I went to a hotel and I asked the concierge, hey, where was the bathroom? And she said, hey, I have to go get my manager. Like, hold on. Like, that's not a great experience. And ultimately, that's what these, current experiences are when you go to a website. I can't tell you how many times I go to the search bar and you just search in a very basic question and there's no results, and that content is there. It's just, again, it's not been designed in a way that allows it to work very well. So that's ultimately, again, where the virtual concierge, the whole idea behind it comes.
Yeah, and contact centers, as you know, are pretty expensive resources. Agents are expensive. They're limited in their availability and capacity. Um, so how much can you really replace the traditional contact center agent, or is this designed to kind of supplement what contact center agents are doing in their day to day?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we're definitely not here to fully replace, contact center agents, because there's always going to be unique circumstances when someone calls in that is going to need human interaction. And really, what we want to do is replace the calls that they don't really need to be there on, the ones that are very like mundane and continuously calling in asking, hey, how do I reset my password, or hey, how do I transfer funds, or any type of question that we can really automate. Those are the ones that we want to take off the agent's plates, because we want to let them do what they're best at. And that's being able to handle that unique circumstance and that emotional interaction that is needed sometimes for humans. And so that's ultimately where we see ourselves sitting. And so, with a lot of that, though, there's a ton of volume that we can reduce in the contact center to alleviate, those agents, and be able to make it, just a much more enjoyable workday. And then on top of that, when you think about being able to aid the agent itself, when they're going in to the knowledge bases, in especially with training a new agent, it's not always easy to find information. And so we're actually working with quite a few enterprises on some POC use cases where we're actually helping their agents be able to find information a lot easier through search and chat. And so that's ultimately another place that we can sit in. And that's just internal facing. Obviously, customer facing, there's a lot of applications as well. But yeah, we definitely don't think that we're going to replace, and I don't think there's ever going to be a full replacement of all human interaction, because at the end of the day, there's still that need to where it might even be more in an emotional perspective of something that I need to talk to a person about.
Absolutely. Well, your superpower seems to be no training, no mapping, no coding. That seems almost too good to be true. What in the tech stack allows you to do that? Because in the past, these things have been very heavy lifting when it comes to configuration and deployment and testing and coding and tweaking the models. Yeah, I'd love a peek into the tech, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to actually, let me present, and I can kind of give you a full breakdown of this.
Yeah, nothing like live demos to really throw a monkey wrench into the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, happy to yeah, let's take a look and see how it works.
So yeah, well, first I'll just show you, looking at our overall all our workspaces. This is what you could think of is once a brand is working with us, they're able to have a workspace. And within that workspace, you have a collection of projects. So one of the great parts is when we go into, talking to a brand, we can actually show them a demo from the very first, call that is leveraging all content from their website. So I'm actually going to show you that today. So I'll go to, one brand that one of the top in insurance brands, and what I'm actually going to do live is show you how easy it is to then bring in their content and just be able to have an experience right away. So, as I do this, I'll kind of walk through the platform quickly. Happy to, if you have any questions, definitely ask it.
No pressure, no
Yeah,
pressure. Even Steve Jobs and Bill Gates had demos that didn't work. So I won't hold my breath, but yes, let's take a
yeah,
look.
yeah, no doubt. So this one's like, I call it nationwide reduced content, because I'm going to actually show you what it's like to bring in more of their content. But when we first think about how our platform works, really you want to bring in sources. So when you bring in a source, we have a few different ways you can do that. Ultimately, as we continue to build out this platform, the vision is that we will have so many pre-built integrations that it would just be pages and of being able to just connect to whatever CMS or knowledge base, wherever
Mhm.
that is. And we've done custom integrations quite a bit as well, just because a lot of these large enterprises, they always leverage these tools in a little bit more sophisticated ways sometimes. But ultimately, what you would do is you bring in the source, and with that, you have all your content. And so then when you have all your content in there, it automatically now ingested that. And when it's ingesting that, what it's doing is it's using our large language model, but we built proprietary layers on top. And what those layers can do is be automated, contextually aware. It's automatically looking at your content, ingesting it, and analyzing it, so that when I go in to ask a question, if that content exists, it's going to be able to pull that out. So what I'll do is actually show you a live demo right now, where I go in and I start asking some questions. And then from there, I'm going to, show you some questions that the content hasn't been trained on. And then I'll bring in that
Mhm.
content and show you. So let me go in here and make
Awesome.
sure it's off mute. Hey, so I reported a claim, but I'm not sure what happens next.
A nationwide claims professional will review your report and start the claims process. If you have any
Is there any way to see who's handling it?
to get the name and phone number for the professional handling your claim, log into your account and click Claims under the
How do I find an investment professional to handle my accounts?
You can use our professional locator tool or
Okay, well, the locator wasn't able to find me anyone.
professional locator looks for a professional within a maximum of 300 miles of your location. Our network of finance
What if I'm already working with an investment manager?
Since you're already working with an investment professional, that person knows your needs the best. The conversations you've had
Now I'm going to ask a couple questions that the AI wouldn't be knowledgeable about, because it hasn't been, hasn't ingested this type of content. So you'll just see really quick. I can go in. What credit cards can I use to pay my bills online? How does my credit score affect my rate? So at this point, we know, and this is really important when you think about at the broader scale of how we can also help these brands is, it's not only, hey, we're creating an experience that allows your users to engage and get information, but it also helps the brand really be able to understand the voice of the customer and really direct their content strategy, right? So, you see it all the time. Our world's changing so frequently, and a lot of time these users start asking about different topics that these brands may not have content built around. And this is ultimately what helps them be able to see, oh, wow, people are asking about these certain topics, like cryptocurrency. We didn't have enough content in there. If I'm a bank, maybe I need to start adding some content to answer those questions, to really allow users to be able to get the information they want. So in this example, I'm going to actually go to Nationwide site. And here they have a bunch of auto and property insurance FAQs. So, in a more sophisticated way, we'd like to integrate obviously with wherever the source of this is. But for today, I'm just going to do an actual, just a copy and paste of all these different questions and answers. So go in here and we'll go copy, and then we'll hop back over to this. And so now I'm going to kind of go through the actual process of, that I touched on in the beginning. So we're actually going to use our in-source editor. So you can think about this as like very similar to Google Doc, but it's just in-house. And so I'm actually going to copy all these different questions and answers. And, there's obviously some things you'd probably want to delete in that just based on, when you're copy and pasting, you get some things you don't want. But ultimately, let's just say, hey, like this is good for now. We're going to save this and we're going to sync and merge. And so you see all these different like links that were captured. But ultimately, we want to merge these changes. And now it's all in the content. Usually it wouldn't show like this. The reason it's shown like this is I copied it as a link. But we can always edit in the content manager. And that's another great part of this. But let's sync the system. And now let's go in there and start asking all these different questions that were, in that type of stuff. There's things that weren't working before. Hey, what credit cards can I use to pay my bills online?
American Express, Discover.
Am I able to use my checking or savings account to make payments?
Yes, you can make a one-time payment or sign up for automatic payments using your savings.
Also, how does my credit score affect my rate?
As with most insurers, we use a credit-based insurance score to predict insurance losses.
What does Nationwide consider when determining my car insurance price?
Some of the factors that influence your premium include: learn more about factors that influence.
What about my property insurance price?
Some of the factors that influence your premium include: learn more about factors that influence the price of homeowners.
And what does your renter's insurance cover?
Renter's insurance may cover loss or
Will it cover damage to my car?
damage to your vehicle would not be covered by your renter's insurance policy.
So just wanted to show that ability to very quickly be able to bring in content and not have to train the AI by, all the different training phrases. Someone could ask a question. I didn't have to, train it on the way to, maintain context. I'm talking about, hey, what does Nationwide consider when determining my car insurance price? Okay, what about property insurance price? And the way we built this engine, this AI engine inside our platform, is to really allow the content to be contextualized and analyzed so that when we go and bring it into the system, you don't have to do all the mapping out that you traditionally do on these systems like Dialogflow and Lex, where you have to build in transitions, you have to source those transitions with data. And then, ultimately the iteration part of that is so manual. You have a lot of these data scientists will go in and kind of what we used to call it is a little bit of a whack-a-mole. Like you're seeing something break and now you have to go in and look at all these data sets and figure out where the data biases are and why it's ultimately breaking. And it's just not a fun process for these engineers or data scientists. So I'll take
Wow, what an
pause there.
approach. Almost magical in the results. And so, tell me about your go-to-market. I mean, you're in early stages. These are still early days for conversational AI, but what are you seeing in terms of customer interest, adoption, deployment, that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So, when we first started, we really wanted to, get the enterprise appetite on, where they were at, because again, we come from this space. We worked with a lot of these large enterprises. We really understood the pain points, early on. And so what we wanted to see is what was their appetite of, hey, like we know they're dealing with this pain. Do they really want to bring in another system? And what does that look like? So early on, what we saw was when we were working with a lot of these large enterprises, that they've invested so much time and money and resources into these different systems. So we didn't want to come at them like, hey, like replace your Google Dialogflow, like replace all that. Like, they've been working on that for 3 years. So really how we're starting with a lot of these enterprises is more as a complement to their existing systems. So instead of, hey, rip and replace, why don't you put us beside your system or potentially even behind it? Because you're not hitting the containment rates you want. Ultimately, when you think of containment, anytime the virtual assistant's unable to handle it, it'll pass to a human. And a lot of the enterprises we're talking to only have containment around 20 to 30%. And so, there's a lot of room to be able to, reduce that call volume, that, even, chat volume that goes to these live agents. And so being able to be a complement is really the way that we saw we could work with these enterprises. And, we're continuously growing our platform. And I can show you a demo a little bit later on, like about transactional experiences, because I think that's kind of the next evolution of where you see these large language models starting to affect these conversational experiences. But ultimately, when we're working with these brands, we really see as a land and expand with the enterprise. We think that we're going to be able to eventually replace once they see the ease and speed at which you can create these experiences. And then ultimately, we want to go downstream too, right? We think that as we scale with partners, there's no reason that, a small mom and pop shop can't put this on their website and be able to ultimately go live and have a web concierge answer questions when, that they don't have people on the phones after, they're closed down. This is a way to provide that 24/7 support, but at a very reasonable rate. And they don't need, experienced people on their end to build this out.
Yeah, that's super exciting. So who should contact you? Is it the enterprises directly? Do you looking to work with partners, developers? Is it, website builders? What is your go-to-market like?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now it's a little bit of this, all of the above, just because, we're still figuring out exactly, how we want to scale with the partners. But at this time, we're working with a lot of enterprises on that POC pilot, right? That phase.
Mhm.
And so as we get further on in that phase and we, really prove this out to production, that's when we're going to see, I think, the influx to where we're not going to be able to handle it. I mean, we're already getting to the point where it's very difficult to handle, just all the different conversations. We're going live right now with a couple of smaller customers, and we're already seeing the strain on the team because, we're a very small team at this point. So the great news is, we're growing, we're hiring a lot. But ultimately, as we really look to make that next push for scaling, that's where we think partners are going to be a huge portion. And especially on the implementation, because there's still some brands that, when you think about like building out a full experience, you still need to hook into their APIs. You need to integrate into their data
Mhm.
sources. It's not, this like, hey, you're going to go live tomorrow. You can go live very quickly, but there's still some of that, preparation and also that maintenance afterwards to continue to improve the experience. And that's where we see partners really leveraging, where we can leverage partners to help out there.
Absolutely. So I'm on my way to IT Expo, the big tech event in Fort Lauderdale as we speak. This is a hot topic, but there are hundreds of conversational AI companies. I'm not sure exactly what they're all doing. How do you see this landscape? Because there are so many companies, so much hype, so much interest in AI, and specifically conversational AI and CX. How do you rationalize this space, and are there too many people attacking it, from different directions? What say you?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very saturated industry, but at the same
Hmm.
time, it's one of the fastest growing industries. So it does make sense
Hmm.
that there's going to be these new startups that pop up every day, and even the largest brands in the world like Google, Amazon, they're trying to solve this too. So yeah, everyone's kind of marching towards that same direction. Where we see us as a differentiator is ChatGPT really like changed the perspective of a lot of brands, and that's enterprises and even conversational AI companies that we know. And everyone is now thinking, well, how can I use ChatGPT? How can I leverage that to change the way that we build out conversational experiences? And to be honest, that part is, it's almost ironic because ChatGPT, it really isn't, the model behind it isn't new. What they did is they put an interface on it and publicly launched it,
Mm.
and that changed everything. But the actual models, like these large language models, like you go back, BERT, back to 2018, so they've been around for a
Mm.
while. And so what we did since 2021, we've been in the industry, we've been on the leading edge of deploying these, and we know the pain points. So really from the very beginning, it was all focused on how can we leverage large language models to really be able to solve all these pain points. And so we just feel that, one, we have a huge head start on this. We built a platform that can already do a lot of the things that you see brands talking about. And then on top of it, we're continuously innovating. Again, I kind of alluded to this, but the transactional experience is just such a different part of conversations. And that's really where we see a huge shift, is being able to use large language models to allow for those. And, I'm happy to get into that if we want to start talking about, what that means. But, ultimately that's where we see a huge competitive advantage.
Indeed, and I think we're probably at time now, but I really want to continue the discussion in depth over time. And shout out to my friend Ben Ortega, who recently joined you, helping to lead the charge. And I'm super excited. I can't wait to see more demos, more customer stories, more use cases, and gosh, it's congratulations on everything you're doing. Onwards and upwards.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great to meet you. And yeah, Ben's new to the team, and we're super excited. He brings a ton of energy, and we're just so excited with where this industry is going. So happy to stay in touch, and love everything you're doing. And once again, appreciate you having me on here.
All right, thanks so much. Have a great week. Thanks everyone for watching, and enjoy checking out Noble. It's a pretty cool opportunity for everyone.